Hi, if we want to take our seats and we can get the Diversion July 22nd, 2021 Diversion Board of Authority meeting called to order. Okay. Don, if I could get a roll call, please.
Mayor Carlson.
Here.
Dr. Mahoney.
Here.
Mayor Dardis.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
I'm here.
Mr. Hendrickson. Mr. Pepcorn. Mr. Ebinger.
Here.
Mr. Strand. Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Mrs. Shirley.
I'm here.
Mr. Steen.
Here.
Mr. Olson. Mr. Seldgevold.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Great, thank you very much, Don. Moving on to number 2, approval of minutes from the June 24th, 2021 meeting. And when I'm asking for a motion for this, I'd like to also get a motion to approve the special Board of Director meetings along with approval for the regular minutes. They did not get included in the packet, but are a separate link on the.
Madam Chairman, I move.
You have a second?
Peterson, second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to the approval of the order of the agenda.
Steen moves approval of the order of the agenda. Campbell second.
Any discussion? Okay, could I get a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney.
Aye.
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Ebinger.
Aye.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Shirley.
Yes.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Mr. Seldgevold.
Aye.
That is everyone.
Thank you. Sorry, I was thinking that was a roll call vote, but it could have been voice. I just want to hear your lovely voices.
It all counts.
Moving on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve the consent agenda by roll call vote.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, now this is a real roll call. Yes.
Just want to make a note on the consent agenda, item C, July Stanley Township MOU, that should be removed.
Would you like to do an amendment, Mayor Mahoney?
Would agree to that.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second for the approval with removal of III. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney.
Aye.
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Ebinger.
Aye.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Shirley.
Yes.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Mr. Seldgevold.
Aye. Sounds like Chuck is on too. Chuck Hendrickson? Did he come on? Nope. Sorry. Heard
I thought I
voice.
heard somebody come online too. I'm not sure who is online. I don't know. Good. Well, moving on to our regular agenda, and I'm going to turn it over to Executive Director Joel Paulson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Board members, let's see here. If we can get we'll just leave it at this. I'll just do my July happenings for you guys verbally. So, number of things, obviously, as a follow-up from the selection of the P3 vendor. We've been working and coordinating with the Red River Valley Alliance on weekly meetings in preparation for commercial close, which we expect to occur in August. And then we expect financial close to occur thereafter in October. So a number of activities need to occur for us to finalize our agreement with the Alliance. And so our P3 team, as well as myself, Chris Bockyard and John Shockley have been working pretty diligently on those items in preparation for the agreement that will come before you in August. I've also been doing a lot of outreach with industry groups and some of the higher ed facilities in town. I think just the announcement of the P3 vendor and that we're moving forward with a large amount of construction is really kind of spurred some discussions along with just in general the workforce issues that we have here locally. We do intend to continue to coordinate and work with NDSCS and M-State. If the board recalls, we do have a 15% apprenticeship requirement in our P3 contract. And so those two vendors, or those two institutions, are two institutions that have certified apprenticeship programs that can provide that resource to the developer to meet that requirement. So I think right now the thoughts in our conversations with those entities are how can we formulate the programs we need, if we don't already have them, to fill specific workforce gaps that we already know we have, and start training people in those areas to fill those workforce gaps. And basically, we're leveraging this project for a need that we already have, but we're also, seeing a benefit with having those positions included in the construction of our project. So those discussions continue to move forward. We want to start to also prepare to just have the community meet the Red River Valley Alliance. They are planning on setting up an office here, I believe, within the next month or two, as we get closer to that commercial close date. There's just a whole lot of folks that they need to interact with as they build this project. And so we've been talking about the concept of an industry day with the Chamber of Commerce, who would host that. And they would invite different industry groups in, different political entities, and folks that would supply either resources or things that would be advantageous for the Alliance as they move through construction. So look for more updates on that as we continue to kind of develop that concept in that day. And I think it'd be a great opportunity. I know myself and others on the team have been getting a lot of phone calls from contractors, engineers, suppliers, and providers wanting to know how they can interact with the Red River Valley Alliance. And it's kind of a little bit premature at this point because we're still working on getting that agreement in place. But once that's in place, they're going to hit the ground running, and we're going to want to be able to connect all of these folks together for the benefit of the program and the success of Red River Valley Alliance. So, and then I'll have Jennifer talk a little bit more in depth about the communications plan. But the communications plan is required by the developer and by the Diversion Authority to kind of have a joint plan together. And that is something that we're looking at finalizing in August. So that has been in development. I know Jennifer's been working pretty hard and been in contact with the Red River Valley Alliance as well, and some of the consultants and staff that they have dedicated to communications. So she'll touch on that a little bit more in depth here later in the agenda. And then we've had a lot of ongoing coordination as well with townships, utilities, MOUs, just in preparation for the start of construction on the channel. Just a lot of activities going. I know we did remove the Stanley Township MOU. The only reason that was not approved at their meeting was their general counsel didn't show up, and so the board didn't feel comfortable approving the MOU, but they are there, and so we would expect that to come before the board here in the next at the next month's meeting. And then according to the settlement agreement, we do have to do 6-month report outs to the Upstream JPA on the different obligations and where we're at with those. And so we're starting to get to that 6-month point. And so we've been working on compiling a reporting format to the JPA and kind of tracking all of the obligations we had according to the settlement agreement. And then, of course, just a lot of permit coordination going on with the Office of the State Engineer and getting ready for construction. All the plans and specs and everything will need to be reviewed from Red River Valley Alliance as we move forward. So we're trying to make sure that we create a efficient review process and that we're not holding up the Red River Valley Alliance at all as we start to move into this design and design build phase, basically. So. Just a lot of activity going on. Everyone's working, many hours and a lot of hard work to just kind of get over this agreement hump and get into that construction phase. Certainly open for any questions if the board has any.
Commissioner Shirley.
Thank you. Joel, we just had our meetings, our budget meetings the last couple of days and visiting with Cass County Rural Ambulance. The question came up, who's going to be communicating with them about closed roads?
That is a great question, Commissioner Sherling. So that protocol is going to be contained in that communications plan that we're working with the Red River Valley Alliance on. And so that will be unveiled next month as we kind of ask the board for approval on this plan, and that it will define where those responsibilities lie. We're entering a very complex but also critical communications phase for closed roads, accidents if they were to occur. We're already kind of doing a test scenario with the I-29 grade raise project where we have the DOT, we have the Corps of Engineers, we have the Diversion Authority, and making sure that we have effective communication between those groups. The scenario came up as if there's an accident, how does the DOT get notified? And how does the Sheriff's Department and the Highway Patrol deal with that? So I don't have a specific answer for you today, but we will be laying all that out prior to the start. And really it's going to come through next month as we start to work through some of this, next couple months as we work through those protocols. So,
Thank you.
yeah. One other thing I can't believe I forgot, but we did have the Assistant Secretary of the Army here today, and we met him out at the inlet site. It was kind of a last minute thing, but we were able to get Mayor Mahoney, Mayor Carlson, Mayor Dardis, and Chad Peterson wasn't able to come, but he's certainly invited, so we had Jason Benson in his place. It was a great meeting. He absolutely was just astounded by the progress that's been made on this project. He's just very, very appreciative of all the hard work that the board has done, that the staff has done, and that we're not just building a project, but we're also looking into these other things like this workforce development issue that I talked to you about earlier. He was very pleased that we're doing those sorts of things with our program. We certainly had an opportunity to talk to him about federal funding and the president's budget as well. So very good meeting, and certainly the mayors can mention anything from this morning if they'd like as well. So.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Polson? All right, thank you. All right, moving on to number 5, General Counsel update. I will turn this over to Mr. Shockley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Diversion Authority Board. Before you, you have a resolution establishing the Alternative Dispute Resolution Board. And the genesis of this board is in both of the permitting requirements from North Dakota and Minnesota. Originally, the North Dakota Office of State Engineer had envisioned this as a board that they wanted, as part of our permit requirements, that the Diversion Authority create. So it was an informal process for landowners that felt that they were adversely impacted by the project, that they could bring their claims in a more informal fashion than taking it straight to court. And so it became a requirement of the North Dakota Office of State Engineer permitting. The requirement to create the Alternative Dispute Resolution Board was also included within the Property Rights and Acquisition and Mitigation Manual. And that was approved as part of the Minnesota DNR permit. So both of our permitting requirements for both states require us to create this alternative dispute resolution board. The intent is that it will handle small informal claims. If a landowner feels that they want to go straight to court, they certainly have that option. This is intended for small claims that would be related to the operation of the proper project and that impact landowners. In general, the board would consist of 3 hearing officers. Hearing officer would be selected from a pool of 14 different bodies that have selected a hearing officer. They would be qualified, either having legal background, financial background, real estate background. When we developed that criteria, we looked at a very similar provision in Minnesota law where they create a board of commissioners to hear eminent domain claims for valuation. And that process works pretty well where they're not judges, they may be attorneys, they might be real estate agents, they might be ag bankers that are used to dealing with valuation issues or claims. We also looked at what Moorhead has done with respect to its administrative claims for building penalties, those sorts of issues, and try to craft this so that it would be a system where a landowner could informally bring their complaint. The maximum value of the claim can be $50,000. So anything above $50,000, it would have to go straight to court. We didn't want the group dealing with really large claims, and that really wasn't the intent of what the Office of State Engineer had envisioned. This has a similar precedent in that the outlet for the Devil's Lake project, the outlets from Devil's Lake, North Dakota into the Cheyenne River, also has a similar alternative dispute resolution board. They've had a couple claims that come before them. I want to emphasize this board is not a policy board. This is to hear specific claims from a landowner. The resolution has in place kind of the criteria that you would have to state your claim, file a filing fee, and then the diversion authority has a chance to respond to the claim in front of the three hearing officers. And the reason that we chose three was so that there wouldn't be a deadlock, so that also looking at the American arbitration rules, they suggest three also for this type of a procedure. And then finally, we had envisioned that after each of the member entities, or not member entities, each of the different boards that we had asked to select a member, that we would have training for those 14 different people. We'd kind of envision that we would maybe ask a retired judge or an active judge or somebody that was willing to come in and do some just basic training on impartiality and hearing cases before them. And then we would stand the board up and they would have claims that would come in. The board actually wouldn't receive any claims until after the project's in operation. So we're quite a few years off before the board would actually be stood up, but we needed to do it as part of a permit condition for the Office of State Engineer. And in that permit condition, they gave us 3 years to establish this board. And so we're coming up on that 3 years. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think overall, it's a good process to vet out some of those smaller claims that property owners may or may not have. And it also requires that the property owner actually bring proof of the claim. They just can't say that I was damaged. They actually have to submit a claim, provide evidence, and the diversion authority has an opportunity to respond. And the Land Management Committee recommended approval of it at yesterday's meeting.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shockley. Mayor Mahoney.
John, I notice you have 14 counties or something like that. It seems unusual that MNDAC is in there, because if you have the counties, why do you, and it kind of confuses me a little bit, because we have a claims, we did a settlement with the Upstream Coalition, and would any of those claims go to them if there's a dispute? If we have a claim to this board, wouldn't it just be the counties that are involved? Because it just seems unusual that you have counties and then you have one other.
Well, I'll let Joel talk about the genesis of using the MNDAC coalition as selecting a person. Within the resolution, they would be prohibited from hearing any claims that deal with the southern embankment and the storage area. So conceivably, there could be downstream claims from, I'm just picking somebody out of the air, like somebody that lives near Hillsborough claims that somehow the project damaged their property. They could sit on a claim like that, but they could not sit on any claims that would involve the southern embankment or the staging area. I'll let Joel kind of talk about the genesis of why they were added.
Thank you, John. Mayor Mahoney, so I have been meeting with the Upstream Coalition Board. They have told me a couple of points. They wanted to make sure that I understood that they are not the same as the Upstream JPA. And, obviously their view of their value as a board, now that there's been a settlement agreement, is representing the landowner interests in the upstream mitigation area. And so the board is made up of a number of different appointed officials, and they believe they represent the folks that live in the upstream mitigation area. And they believe because of the impact of that area from our project, that they should hold standing in a dispute resolution board or be a part of a dispute resolution board. So we put it on here for your consideration today. Ultimately it's up to this board to decide, from that policy perspective. John has included all the counties upstream and downstream, and he's also included the Office of the State Engineer and the Minnesota DNR. And the Minnesota DNR did respond back that they believe they're a regulatory entity and they will not take part in this. We're down to 13, I suppose, John. But I think the Office of the State Engineer has communicated that they will take part in the dispute resolution board.
And sometime because there's a little confusion about the JPA and the MINDAC group. And sometime after the meeting, whatever, could you send out to our members just who's part of the group you're talking about so we understand that? And a little confusion on my part because in my mind, they still could get that advice. I mean, all the other ones are political entities or counties and we have representation. This is not a county representation. So, I mean, right now, they could go to a landowner and say, here's your rights, here's what you need to do, we'll help you out and help you figure it out. So it's just a little confusing as how they fit in that role as we all make structure or policy makers. Pleased that they want to finally kind of get in and maybe help us out a bit to get us over the goal line, but wondering if they're adversarial or they're going to be in a position to help us get to resolutions.
Yeah, I can do that, Mayor. And from my perspective, and having met with them on a number of occasions, they are looking to assist landowners in the upstream mitigation area to find resolution and consensus on whatever property rights that we need to purchase. Because of the opposition for so many years, I think there's a number of folks that we interact with our land agents that the communication just isn't very well. And so the thought is the Upstream Coalition would assist in those conversations to help explain to property owners, how the process goes, how the DA is going to value land and flowage easements, and help guide them to find appropriate attorneys. I am not getting any sense that there's opposition coming from them. It's more of assisting what they believe is their group that they represent, kind of getting over this hump of property rights acquisition from the landowner's perspective. So that's kind of where this all came from, I suppose.
Commissioner Steen.
Thank you. Mayor Mahoney, you suggested looking at something after this meeting. I think after this meeting might be a little bit late if we're actually going to take action on this. I think some of us on this board would be interested in knowing who actually represents or is on the MINDAC Upstream Coalition before we take action on this. There's probably some other questions that some of us haven't had the opportunity to ask about this agreement. And so I think it'd be a little late in the game to get information after the fact, after we vote on this. That's my personal thought, and I'm not sure if there's any significant rush on
I'm not
this.
adverse to tabling until we get that information, because I don't even know if our chairperson has met with MINDAC, and to me, it'd be important to have you meet with him and get the same feeling that Joel has, and seeing the value of having him on there. So I wouldn't disagree at all on postponing it.
Madam Chair, just to clarify, this isn't an agreement with any of these entities. This is establishing a dispute resolution board. And just for clarity, so that we're all on the same page, this is not an agreement with any of those counties. They will pick one person to be in a pool of hearing officers. It may be given, we had envisioned that the 3 hearing officers would be picked randomly. Just like in the court system, you have the judges, they put in a pool and you get a case and the judge gets a case assignment. They don't go out looking for the case assignment, it's assigned to them. And that was the same way. This is a pool. You pick 3 out of the pool randomly. They're assigned to hear the case. And so the selection of each of the counties was they would be asked to appoint someone with the proper qualifications, either legal training, financial background, or real estate. And so you can certainly table it if that's what you're looking for. But just for clarity, this is not an agreement. And from a timing perspective, we do need to get this done this year. But I just want to make clear this isn't an agreement with any of those entities.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Commissioner Sherling and then Mayor Dartis.
Thank you.
Your microphone's not on.
Speaker.
Excuse me. There we go. You mentioned that, that this was recommended by Land Management yesterday. I'm chair, and I was the lone holdout on this. After reviewing this, I have some concerns, not only for the 14 suggested or listed entities that would be part of this, but some of the other language. Had been the first time I had an opportunity to review this, and so I agree perhaps tabling this would be wise, so we could do a little deeper dive in this. Joel, you mentioned that this group is interested in assisting the landowners, and for that reason alone, I think that disqualifies them. By nature, they are not impartial. And this group has cost Cass County taxpayers millions and millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. And if this project is delayed because of them, it's going to be billions of dollars. So I have real heartburn with having the MNDAC Upstream Coalition being able to write out a check from Cass County taxpayers. But perhaps you can clarify that better down the road and we can revisit the issue. But you'll notice in the audience, we have Ted Preister with the Red River Basin Commission. He is here at pretty much every meeting. I don't see that group listed here, and that would be exactly the group that you'd be looking for. Their whole purpose is to bring together parties from Minnesota, North Dakota. The North Dakota Office of State Engineer is a board member. The DNR is a board member. Pembina has got a board representative. Richland, Wilkin counties, all up and down. Dave Pepcorn is the vice chair right now. I mean, this is why they were put together, was to bring people together because of water issues. So why aren't they on this list? All these questions I have, and perhaps that's why it would be wise to table this.
And we could certainly add on different groups, and just once again, trying to be very precise, because this is a quasi judicial board. One member, one hearing officer can't make a decision on their own. It has to be 2 of 3. And so we could certainly add different entities, but it's important to remember they pick one person to sit in the pool of hearing officers. And so that hearing officer, depending upon when the claim comes in, they may or may not get picked for it. I'll use Ada County, Norman County as an example. They could pick someone, a retired attorney. It might be 10 years before they actually hear something, and they have to make a decision. 2 of 3 would make the decision, and it's only specific to those facts after the applicant presents their case and the diversion authority presents their case. And so this isn't a policy-making board. This is actually to hear disputes and claims of landowners. It's very specific to each parcel, and they have to listen to the facts and apply the law to that claim. And so regardless of what policy the organization has, they have to act in their capacity as a hearing officer. We also have the ability as the authority, if someone selects a hearing officer that, whether it's one of the counties and they're either not qualified or have some serious conflict of interest, we can reject that hearing officer. But we can certainly have more conversations about it.
So could I just follow up on that one? One of the concerns I had was on section 5.06, item C. The authority can also request the removal of an assigned officer. In the event the authority requests such removal, the officer will decide whether he or she can fairly or objectively review the claim. So it's not up to the authority, it's up to that individual person whether or not they feel they can. That's an awful lot of latitude. And so that, and we don't have to get into every detail, but that's just one of the concerns I have on this.
Okay.
Mayor Dardis.
John, Mr. Shockley, I have a question with regard to the resolution board. $50,000 is a cap, okay? So an individual entity, can they bring 1, 2, 3, 10, as long as they keep it under 50,000, or is that capped?
Well, great question. And this isn't about entities bringing claims. This is individual landowners. So
When I used the term entity, I meant an individual landowner. So I'm in disagreement with the diversion authority on my property. So I can make a claim for $49,000, and I can make another claim for $49,000 and continue to do that so I don't have to go to court?
well, it would have to look at the damage that you suffered. So you would have to prove your case, and you also have to file the $500 fee. It's just like court. I mean, there's nothing stopping a landowner from making multiple claims. The idea and the requirement is that we have this option for these smaller claims for people to have them heard. And so in theory, if a property owner a large farmer had 10 parcels and they argued they were all damaged, yes, they could bring 10 separate claims, one for each parcel being damaged.
My point was that I would respectfully say that any claim that they bring forward is an accumulative up to $50,000.
Correct.
That might be something that you think of, that they can only bring 2 25s, but they can't bring 4 49s. That's all I'm saying.
And the one thing I do want to caution everybody, this is a requirement of our mitigation. So we have to do it. It's, we can work on the kind of the specifics of it, but it has to stay in what the law would term like an alternative dispute setting, where you have hearing officers, they have the ability to hear claims as an outlet. And so we have to keep some independence to this board so that they can do their job and hear the claims. Because otherwise, my concern is that both DNR and Office of State Engineer would say that we're not making a good faith effort to actually implement this program. And the other way I could describe it is like a diversionary court setting where it's less formal than going before the judge. And the reality is, I think that either party, so like they go through the hearing process, the authority doesn't like the result, we can always appeal that to court. So.
Thank you. Turning over to Commissioner Campbell.
Thank you. First off, I'm not in opposition to us tabling this. If there's that many questions, I think it's appropriate, but I just want to get a handle on what this dispute resolution board is and when it actually will be implemented. It's my understanding that this is going to be for claims as a result of an event. This isn't about acquisitions. It's not about somebody this group south being able to come in and suggest that we're not acquiring properties on a fair basis. That's not what this board is, right?
Correct, Commissioner Campbell.
So this is pretty much after this project is in place and in the event of damage is done as a result of the event, that's when this board would take place. And then it was also my understanding within this process was that the area of the folks down south who want to be one of these 14 positions, they would not be able to be selected as one of the 3 if the claim came from that area.
You're correct.
I mean, I just want to make sure I'm understanding everything here. I do know that there's other issues that can be cleaned up. I know Commissioner Sherling has raised a couple of issues in language and stuff like that, but I don't mind tabling, but I want to make sure that we're talking about, this is not about acquisitions. This is about in the event a landowner has damage, right, and they should have a right to some sort of an avenue to get that corrected.
Correct. You're absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Campbell, and this board would not be stood up until after the project is completed and actually operational. It doesn't have anything to do with appraisals. It doesn't have anything to do with land acquisition. It doesn't have anything to do with construction disputes. So if somebody's mad that there's too much dust in their yard, this is not what the board is for. The board is that as a result of project operations, if they feel that they have been damaged by the project, instead of forcing them to go to court, because absent this board, their immediate response is just to file a claim in court. And so the Office of State Engineer, just like with the outlet project for Devil's Lake, felt that was a inequitable resolution process, because some landowners may have small claims like, it left a whole bunch of trees on my property and you didn't come out and clean them up. Or, you can imagine different types of claims that the authority just didn't do its job, or the way the project operated that we didn't expect it to. This is an alternative for them instead of going directly to court. Because right now they still could go to court. They can bypass this board completely. This is just an informal way to resolve those disputes.
So actually, I'm going to be looking for either a motion to approve this resolution or a motion to table and bring it back next month.
Move to table for 2 weeks. Or move 2 weeks, just enough time? I mean, till next meeting, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Next meeting.
till next meeting.
Okay. So there's a motion to table until the next board meeting, and I'm assuming that would need to also go through land first and then come to the board. Do I have a second? Do I need a second for? Yeah, I do.
You do. Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
The other question I had, Mr. Shockley, is you have 14 members on there from counties. And initially, when we were kind of visualizing this, I thought it was going to be mainly the counties that were most affected in a sense by it. I mean, we go all the way up to Pembina. So my curiosity is that kind of how boards are, just is that a custom of Minnesota and North Dakota that you go all the way up there? Or is there also a thought you wouldn't necessarily have to do 14?
So the choice of the counties was to introduce some impartiality into the hearing pool. So remember, you drop 14 people into the hearing pool, and then you pick out 3 randomly. And so, just doing some statistical, analysis, you're likely to pull one person from, by Pembina and another person from Wahpeton, and maybe you pull one person from Cass. It's just random. And so that was part of the rationale to kind of make a bigger group, a pool, if you will, of hearing officers that could hear these claims impartially. And then the second was that we felt that the Red River Valley has interesting hydrology and geology and geography, and that's so flat that we wanted hearing officers that had some basic understanding of the Red River Valley, so that we didn't necessarily want to pull somebody from, say, Burleigh County in North Dakota, where they have lots of hills and they don't understand how flooding necessarily works in the Red River Valley. And so we tried to create a wide swath of people that could be potential hearing officers. And then,
So those counties, their county commissioners will pick somebody basically in their county. Okay.
and we had envisioned it could be, it could be the local ag banker, it could be a real estate agent that sells farmland or commercial property, it could be a retired state's attorney. In fact, we had a question from one of the state's attorneys, because I think they kind of thought that the board might end up picking them about how their role would work. And so that's how we'd envisioned it. And then they would get training, and then they would, when you have these claims come in, we would randomly choose 3 and they would hear it. And the authority is represented, has a chance to put on its case. And if we don't like the result, then we can appeal it to court, and so can the complainant.
Madam Chair, if I could just make a few comments, just from a practical nature instead of from a legal side of things. If somebody comes with a claim of damages after the project operates, they're going to come to the diversion authority. We're going to work with them. If it's obvious there was, damages as a result of us operating the project, That will come to the board as far as those damages, and you guys have the first chance to see that and make a determination. If it's obvious that it's somebody just looking for some money, or there's, it's so intangible that our project would have done whatever the claim is, and you just can't put two and two together, that's what would then start this next process of the dispute resolution board. And the claimant has the option to just take it straight to district court and not go through the dispute resolution board. But this is a piece of a process to find resolution of a problem that is intended to save money and make it more efficient to come to that resolution, both from the diversion authority side and from the claimant side, up to that $50,000 mark. But even if the dispute resolution board found in favor of the claimant and the board still didn't like that finding or still felt it inappropriate, it would not take away our right to continue to take that or appeal that to district court. So from a practical nature, I'm not anticipating this board to be used very much. I think, it's going to be pretty obvious whether our project has an impact unintended that we haven't thought about during the operation. But as John mentioned, it is a requirement to both a permit and our settlement agreement. So we do have to stand it up and put it together. So.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley and Mr. Paulson. So I have a motion on the floor to table in a second. All in favor of that motion, if you could please signify by saying aye.
We have to roll call this
Yes, we can do a roll
policy
call.
issue. So,
Could we get a roll call, please?
Mayor Carlson,
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney,
aye.
Mayor Dardis,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Ebbinger,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling,
Yes.
Mr. Steen,
Yes.
Mr. Seldgevold.
Aye.
It is everyone.
Mr. Olson's in attendance too, and he votes yes.
Thank you, Mr. Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. We didn't know you were on. All right. And hopefully everyone will be able to reach out to either Joel or Mr. Shockley before the next month's meeting so that we can do a vote on that next month. Moving on to U.S. Army Corps of Engineers project update. Ms. Williams.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to provide the monthly update for July for the Corps' activities. At both the Diversion and Inlet and the Wild Rice construction, a lot of vertical walls being formed up and poured. Next week, there's going to be a lot of vertical concrete pours at both sites. Number 3, the I-29 raise, you can see that the bypass is being vigorously built out there. They're hauling from the Red River Structure site, which you can drive down Pfeiffer Drive and park your car and take just a little walk north, and you can look into the excavation and all that. About 265,000 yards are coming from that site via the haul road to build the bypass. So we're pretty excited to see that. We're calling that initiating construction of the Red River Structure because that's less work that we'll have to do under that contract. Number 4, reach SE1 on the other side of this update. There's some pictures of that. It's a little hard to get back in there and see the construction, so I've provided a few pictures, and that project's going really well. They might even be complete this year. The Red River Structure design, after 2 years of intense design, we're coming towards the end of that. We'll have a final design by the end of August. And our plan is to award a contract in March of 2022. And that'll be the largest contract that the Corps of Engineers will award on this project. 6 and 7, Southern Embankment designs. Primarily, we're coming to the end of design of Reach 2A, which has been the diversion inlet structure, and Drain 27, and we'll bid that out in 22 as well. The Drain 27 wetland mitigation project, we're at the end of that. Final design is the end of this month, and we'll award a contract about second quarter of the next fiscal year. Drayton Dam, same, we're at the end of, getting towards the end of design on that one, and we'll award that in 2022 as well. Another big visit, in addition to the ASACW coming today, we've got the Chief of Engineers coming to visit again on August 12th. Scott Spellman, and he will be here probably for a good portion of the morning on the 12th. And so we're working with Jennifer and the Diversion Authority to plan that visit, and it'll include a tour so that anybody, on the board that would like to tour with General Spellman, we'd love to have you with that morning. So with that, any questions?
Does anyone have any questions or comments? All right. I do want to thank you on behalf of the board for helping coordinate the visit of the Assistant Secretary. I think it was some really great conversations, and I think it helped to see actually be a boots on the ground and the visual of that control structure, and thank you for helping arrange that.
Oh, absolutely, thank you.
Right. Moving on to public outreach update. Mr. Olson.
Yes, Madam Chair. The Outreach Committee met yesterday. I had a fairly brief agenda. Jennifer shared with us her communication plan as she's working on that, and then also updating it. And also, she was able to talk to the P3 communication team, which is a local team out of Flint Communications in Fargo. And she was able to make contact with them as they will be working closely together. Jennifer, do you want anything to share?
Sure. Thank you. Glad to be here. We have a target date for mid-August to have this communications plan in place. So unfortunately, until the final contracts are signed, we can't get moving with them just yet, but we were able to at least get to know each other and sort of get a feeling for what the expectations are on both sides. And I'm pleased to say that the plan that they had already put together on their side and what I have done is in very strong alignment. So I think there'll be some really good positive movement very quickly once we reach that mid-August date. But just to give you a quick highlight on some of the things that we're focusing on to make sure that we can move quickly and be successful in our partnership. We have all these various entities right now who are working on the project in different technology platforms and different expectations, so it's very hard to share information even from that communications perspective. So we're making sure that we have the right workflows and processes in place where we can easily work together in that way. Another area that we're working on is just making sure that we have a plan for auditing on an annual basis. So we might put a plan in place and just to make sure that we all stay on track and we're all doing what the expectation is. We'll be making sure that there's a strong plan for auditing and just backtracking to make sure that we're keeping where we need to be. And then one of the big focuses as well is just getting that crisis communications plan in place. So as Commissioner Sherling mentioned earlier with the incident response, that is heavy on our mind for incident response, for any workplace safety for the construction sites, also safety for the community with the all of the construction that's happening. So those are some of the key focuses for the plan as we get started, but there'll be a larger plan overall that we'll be happy to share with you as we get closer to that mid-August date. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Darling. Any questions? Mayor Mahoney.
And
Oh, sorry, Mr. Olson, go ahead.
well, before we go off outreach, I have a comment to make, but go ahead and take questions first.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Mahoney.
Roger, the chamber and economic development's come by very concerned about the workforce or numbers we might get in the community, how that might affect the rest of the community as far as workforce issues. And Chad and I were just talking about at the beginning just our workforce issues. But one of the requests they had is could they meet with the P3 developers and kind of get a sense of how many people we're bringing in, how many people we're hiring locally. Because today we're down in the Ames construction, on that inlet, they only have 28 people working on that thing right now. On the Wild Rice, they have an equally low number. I think some kind of Moorhead projects going on too, isn't there? I don't remember. Is there some overpass or something going on? Anyway, the numbers are not necessarily as high as we thought. It seems like they're judiciously using the numbers of people they have. So what concerns the community is the number of 7,700, and people are, right now, our vacancies in our apartments are real tight or getting tight again. So I think it'd be great if the communications team could help us work with some of the local entities to try to solve that issue. How many are they going to hire locally? Are we going to be hiring our local contractors? How many people are expected to come in? We just had a Cass County Planning Commission this morning. Are we going to have man camps? What are the things we as a community have to get prepared for? And so we have reached out a little bit that we're going to ask for the county leaderships and the city leaderships to sit down with the P3 developer as well to see what the expectations in our cities are. So if the communications team would help us do that, Jennifer, it'd be appreciated.
Absolutely. And I actually should have pointed this out as one of the things that we're working on as well. So I met with the chamber a week before last, and this was a concern that they mentioned. So I think we have a good plan on how we can partner on that and pull resources from both the chambers and the diversion team to help make some of that happen. So more to come.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Olson, I'll turn it back to you.
Sure. And I came late to the meeting, and I'm sure that Joel or someone mentioned the ag meeting or the landowner meeting that we had last night at Hickson and again tonight. And I just want to thank the team for how professional that the meeting was presented. It was just very clear and easy to understand, and it brought a lot of great information, I think, to the landowners and the land operators. And I would really encourage diversion members, if you can, to go out there and spend a few hours or a couple hours and listen to it so you can understand really what's happening and how we're handling and mitigating the impact that we're having on the staging area. So I think it's very informational, and I know a lot of you probably don't know a lot about farming, but it certainly is a good way to get some information here. That's all I have. Thanks.
Something I'll add to that is we also documented the questions and answers from last night's meeting, and we'll do the same tonight. So we'll be happy to share that information as well, so you know what's the sentiment on everyone's mind for those meetings.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Olson, and thank you, Jennifer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Shirley.
Thank you. Yes, Lands met yesterday, and in addition to discussing the dispute resolution board, we also had the usual reports for acquisitions, appraisals that are in your packet. I won't go over all of those. We have acquired property interests on over 650 parcels at this point, and we also had a property exchange request that we voted unanimously to recommend to this board to review. I believe Eric's going to walk us through that.
Let's see.
Hi guys, can you hear me okay?
Kind of.
No?
We can hear you.
Is
There's
that better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Actually on my way to the next landowner meeting in Hickson. Sorry for not being there in person, but looking forward to presenting to some more landowners tonight. Regarding the land exchange, there is a letter from the joint board in your packet, along with a map showing the location of the property that we're acquiring, as well as the property that is being requested to exchange. So the property owner that we are acquiring is Eric Score. He has a residence and a commercial construction business that he operates in the upstream mitigation area. We've worked with our land agent team and the property owner to try to find suitable replacement sites, and as you might hear, there's just not a whole lot of available replacement sites in the rural areas. So the property owner did identify that the project does own a piece of land just south of the St. Benedict Cemetery, or St. Benedict's Church. And they asked if we would consider an exchange of that land. So we presented that request to the Cass County Joint Board last month. They approved the exchange, obviously subject to consideration by the Diversion Authority Board. As Ms. Shirley mentioned, we did discuss this at the Land Committee yesterday. Had some questions about how this fits in with the policy. And upon that discussion, the Land Committee made a recommendation to the board to go ahead and make the approval or make the recommendation. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but that gives you a summary of what we're looking for.
Thank you, Eric. Anything else
Move
to add,
to approve.
Commissioner Shirley? Oh.
I would second that.
Okay, I have a motion from Mayor Mahoney and a second by Commissioner Shirley. Any further discussion? All right, could I get a roll call, please?
Mayor Carlson,
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney,
Aye.
Mayor Dardis,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Ebinger,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Shirley,
Yes.
Mr. Steen,
Yes.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Mr. Seldebold.
Aye.
That is everyone.
All right, motion carries. Thank you very much.
And then I would just ask Commissioner Campbell and Mr. Olson if they have anything to report from their entities on acquisitions.
I can certainly, we met today, the MCC JPA met today, and we too reviewed the property acquisition status reports.
Could I have the people that are on the phone please mute themselves, please? Thank you.
There we go. And we got an update on where we're at with the Red River Control Structure acquisitions. There's 2 of the 4 have been approved, and we're still working with the other 2 that are needed for that. We did approve 4 appraisals and 2 housing differential payment appraisals today. So those processes continue to move forward. And we also had our first little discussion about pest control on a historic log cabin that needs to be taken care of, and so we did approve taking care of that. So that's pretty much it.
Yep. I should mention too that that log cabin will probably next year be the Steam Threshers reunion show, so you can still go see it. We'll still be able to go see it. Okay. Mr. Olson,
Yeah,
are
the
you on?
Cass County.
Okay.
You bet. Cass County Joint Board, we approved a couple of appraisals for just compensation. So that's would be the first step in an offer to the landowners or the property owners. And we heard from our land agents that the environmental easements that we're trying to acquire are going rather slowly, and it isn't because of an effort on their part. It's just getting the landowners to give up that right for a long time, and so there is concern about that. But they said they will keep working on it and see if they can't continue to get landowners to agree to these easements. And it just, and they're all in negotiation on properties or on easements for the environmental monitoring. So things are going as good probably as we can expect at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Okay. Any further questions or comments in regards to lands?
No, that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Shirley. All right, moving on to finance update. Mayor Dardis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Finance Committee met yesterday. We had a number of items that we had action items on. The approved contract actions. At that point in time, Mr. Paulson will probably like to review this with us. It's an amendment to the contract with industrial builders. And Mr. Paulson?
Thank you, Mr. Dardis. So this is a change order for work package 43G. It's a contract we have with Industrial Builders for the wetland mitigation project in Oxbow, Hickson, Baki. So what happened here is they ran into unsuitable fill in some of the locations where they were establishing wetlands. They were required to remove that fill and haul in suitable material. And the resulting change order for that removal and hauling is $102,152. And so we will need the board to consider taking action on this today.
What's the total contract price? With them?
Let me grab that for you. The total contract price after, let's see, we're at about 2.5 million.
Move to approve.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, could I get a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney.
Aye.
Mayor Dardis.
Yes?
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Ebinger.
Aye.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling.
Yes.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Mr. Olson.
Yes.
Mr. Selzvold.
Aye.
That is everyone.
In addition, the Finance Committee also had a report by Mr. Costin, approval of the bills by Mr. Costin, which were all actions that were passed. In other business, we also reviewed 3 of the Diversion Authority Board approval MOUs, which has been mentioned earlier by Mr. Shockley. And we also had a property acquisition status report that was given by Mr. Paulson, as Mr. Dodds was, again, out in the field working hard. We also had an important member of the Finance Committee will be their last meeting, and Mr. Mike Montpleasure. He has been a great mentor and helpful in this whole process. His intellect, his demeanor, his experience will be missed on the Finance Committee. And so Mr. Montpleasure's last meeting was yesterday. And to all of those of you from the county, Mr. Wilson, commissioners, please give Mr. Montpleasure our very best because he was a valued member of the Finance Committee. That concludes my report, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, moving on to number 10, other business. Do we have any other business before the board today? All right, I don't see that we have any. So our next meeting is going to be held on August 26, 2021. And I need a motion to adjourn, right?
So move.
Okay, I have a motion from Campbell and a second from Sherling. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Besides Mayor Mahoney, probably? Okay, all right. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.